They thought I wouldn't fight back, that I was still the quiet one, the invisible daughter who always stepped aside. But tonight, as I sat at that dinner table with my family's smiles stretched too wide, I knew exactly what they were planning, and I was ready. The scent of roast beef and Parker House rolls should have comforted me, but instead, it felt like poison in the air. My father's grip lingered too long when he shook my hand, his smile sharp as a blade. My mother's laugh echoed too loudly, bouncing off the crystal glasses she only brought out for special occasions. And Autumn, my younger sister, practically vibrated with excitement. That look in her eyes, the one that always meant trouble. I noticed the folder first, manila, tucked under my father's napkin, a corner peeking out like a wolf's fang. My chest tightened. I already knew what was inside. "How's the clinic, Sierra?" My mother's voice was syrupy sweet, too casual. "Still working those crazy hours?" "Business is good." My voice came out steady, but my pulse hammered in my throat. I saw my father's eyes flicker toward that folder. Autumn smirked. Dad set his fork down with a sharp clink. "We've been thinking about the future of your clinic." My stomach turned. This wasn't dinner. It was an ambush. Autumn leaned forward, her smile wide and vicious. "I've drawn up a plan to help. I'll handle management while you focus on patients. You'll thank me later." She slid a page across the table like it was a royal decree. "All I'm asking for is 25% of profits. A fair deal, considering what I'll bring in." The sound in my head was deafening, my own blood rushing. In an instant, the memories came back like broken glass. Nights spent sleeping on treatment tables because I couldn't afford rent and malpractice insurance at the same time. The ramen dinners, the $187,000 in loans I carried on my back, while Autumn partied through college with money I sent home. The days I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria just so she wouldn't drop out. And now here she was, demanding my life's work as if it were hers by birthright. I looked at her, at my parents, and I realized this was the same story it had always been. I had built my life from nothing, brick by brick, while they applauded Autumn's charm, her smiles, her disasters. I had been invisible for so long they thought I'd just hand everything over without a fight. I forced myself to breathe, to steady the tremor in my hands. I reached slowly for my glass of water, the condensation cold against my skin, and set it back down with deliberate precision. Then I spoke, my voice like ice. "I already have a clinic manager." For the first time that night, Autumn's smile faltered. Inside, a darker truth whispered, "This isn't just about money. It never was. It's about them finally seeing me. And tonight, they will." The silence that followed my words was sharp enough to slice through bone. For the first time in years, my family looked at me as though they weren't sure what I might do next. And that felt good. Autumn scoffed, recovering first. "A manager? Sierra, please. We both know you're drowning. You've been working yourself to death. Someone needs to take over before the whole thing collapses. You should be grateful I'm even offering." Her words hit me like a fist, but I didn't flinch. I had learned long ago that with my family, flinching was the same as surrender. Dad leaned forward, folding his hands, his voice low and grave, like he was giving a sermon. "Sweetheart, your sister's right. You're not a businesswoman. You're a doctor. Let her handle what you can't. Families should share in each other's success. That's how wealth is built." Wealth. There it was. The word that had been hanging like a storm cloud over the table. Not health, not patience, not care. Wealth. I kept my face calm, but inside something shifted. Years of exhaustion and sacrifice calcified into something harder, something sharper. "You think I'm failing?" I asked quietly. Mom's hand twitched on her wine glass. "We just want to help." "No," I cut in. My voice came out colder than I expected. "You think I'm failing? That's why you're here with contracts instead of congratulations." Autumn's lips curled into that familiar, condescending smile. "Don't be dramatic. This is business. You wouldn't understand." And there it was again, the knife they'd always used on me. Invisible, but lethal. For years, I had swallowed it. Let them decide I was the plain one, the serious one, the one destined to serve while Autumn shined. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms across my chest, studying them the way I studied patients. Every twitch, every flicker of guilt, every forced smile. I'd been invisible for so long, they didn't realize invisibility had given me an advantage. You learn things when no one's watching you. You see patterns, weaknesses. I saw their greed now, plain as an X-ray. "You know what's funny?" I said slowly. "When I was eating instant noodles 6 nights a week so I could afford my malpractice insurance, none of you wanted to share in my success. When I maxed out 3 credit cards just to buy my first ultrasound machine, you weren't there to manage me. But now that the clinic is thriving, suddenly I'm incompetent?" Autumn rolled her eyes. Oh, spare me the sob story. You're lucky we're even interested. Without family backing, you'll hit a ceiling sooner or later. Investors don't trust women who run things alone. The word alone stung more than I wanted to admit, but instead of shrinking under it, I let it burn me clean. Alone built that clinic, I whispered. Dad sighed heavily, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. He slid the folder toward me, the papers spilling slightly out of their neat stack. Sign it, Sierra. It's not a big deal. 25%. Autumn handles the money, you handle the patients. Everyone wins. My hand hovered over the folder, but not to sign. Instead, I pulled it closer, opened it, and skimmed the contents. They hadn't even been subtle. Her name already filled in, her cut already inked. My name was the only blank space left. That's when I felt the laugh bubble up. Small at first, then louder, sharp and humorless. My family stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, or maybe for the first time I'd finally found it. You think you're saving me, I said, still laughing, but you don't even realize I've been saving myself this whole time, and I don't need you. Autumn slammed her hand on the table. Don't be stupid. You'll regret this when everything falls apart. Her voice cracked on the last word. Fear. There it was, just for a second, the mask slipping, and in that moment, I realized something vital. They needed me far more than I would ever need them. Autumn's words hung in the air like smoke. You'll regret this. Maybe once I would have believed her, but not tonight. I closed the folder slowly, pressed it flat with both hands, and slid it back across the polished wood table. My pulse slowed, my breathing leveled. Every ounce of fear that had weighed on me melted into something else. Clarity. I'm not signing, I said, steady as stone. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's lips parted like she might protest, but she stayed quiet, her fingers trembling on her wine glass. Autumn leaned back, arms folded, glaring at me as if sheer force of will could bend me. For years, I had wanted their approval. For years, I had been willing to bleed myself dry just for 1 ounce of recognition. But tonight, I saw the truth so clearly it almost blinded me. They had never wanted my success. They had only wanted what they could take from it. You think you've built something alone, Dad said, voice heavy, disappointed. But family made you who you are. You owe us. I let out a breath. You're right. Family did make me who I am, but not in the way you think. Your neglect taught me to work harder. Your silence taught me to solve problems on my own. And your favoritism taught me that if I wanted to be seen, I'd have to build something impossible. My gaze locked on Autumn, and I did. Her face flushed, red blooming across her cheeks. She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised a hand, stopping her. Actually, I said, reaching into my bag, I brought something too. The three of them froze as I placed a slim black binder on the table. I slid it open, revealing a neat stack of papers, clinic records, profit margins, expansion contracts, and a glossy brochure mock-up. Autumn frowned. What's this? I smiled. A small, sharp thing. Evidence. I tapped the top sheet. The clinic isn't just surviving, it's thriving. I doubled revenue in the last year. Patient referrals are up by 40%. And just last week I signed a contract with a private investor to expand into 2 new locations. Do you know what that means? Their silence was deafening. It means, I continued, that even if I gave you 25% of my current clinic, you wouldn't touch the future growth. The new clinics are mine alone. Legally. Ironclad. I learned something while you were too busy underestimating me. How to protect myself. Dad's face darkened, a vein throbbing at his temple. Mom looked down, ashamed, avoiding my eyes. But Autumn's mask shattered. The smug superiority crumbled, replaced by something raw and ugly. Desperation. You can't do this, she snapped. You can't shut me out like this. I leaned forward, cutting her off, my voice dropping to a whisper sharp enough to wound. You don't deserve anything you haven't earned, and you've earned nothing. Her breath hitched. For the first time in our lives, I saw fear in her eyes, not the petty kind she wielded like a weapon growing up. The real kind. The kind that comes when the ground beneath you starts to crack. That was the cost. The prize. Watching the realization dawn on her that she had no claim over me anymore. I gathered my binder, tucked it neatly back into my bag, and stood. Dinner was enlightening, I said softly, but I won't let you steal what I built. Not anymore. As I walked toward the door, I could feel their stares burning into my back. For years, I had left their house feeling small, erased, unseen, but tonight I walked out taller, stronger, and as the door clicked shut behind me, I finally understood. My freedom wasn't just in keeping my clinic. It was in refusing to ever again let them write my story. That was my prize. The night air hit me like a baptism, cold and sharp against my skin. I stepped off my parents' porch and into the silence of the street, my shoes clicking against the pavement. For the first time in years, I wasn't leaving their house with my shoulders hunched and my head lowered. No, my spine was straight, my chest open. I could breathe. But freedom doesn't come without consequences. By the time I drove back to my apartment, my phone was already vibrating with messages. Dad, you've embarrassed this family. Mom, please don't do this. You'll regret pushing us away. Autumn, you're nothing without us. The clinic will fail. Just wait. I tossed the phone onto the counter and let it buzz itself into silence. Their words still stung. They always had that power. But tonight they didn't break me. Tonight, I saw them for what they were. Threats from people who had lost control. Still, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the doubt crept in. What if they were right? What if I was making a mistake? What if the clinic did collapse without Autumn's so-called help? I rolled onto my side, forcing myself to remember. The nights I had worked until my vision blurred. The patients who hugged me with tears in their eyes, whispering that I'd saved them. The staff who looked at me like I was more than a boss, like I was a leader. That wasn't luck. That wasn't charity. That was me. The next morning, I arrived at the clinic early, long before patients started filing in. The waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. The sunlight filtered through the blinds in slanted golden stripes. My kingdom, my sanctuary. And yet, even here, the aftermath followed me. Dr. Alvarez, my receptionist Maya, stepped into my office, holding her phone nervously. There's something you should see. She handed me her phone, and I felt my stomach drop. A post from Autumn. Be careful where you go for medical care. Some clinics value profit over patients. We all want to support women in business, but not at the cost of safety. She had attached a photo of my clinic's exterior, subtle enough to avoid a lawsuit, venomous enough to do damage. By noon, the whispers had already started. A patient canceled an appointment. Another asked if it was true that we were cutting corners. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. The cost was becoming real. I locked myself in my office, hands pressed flat against the desk. My old self would have crumbled here, would have called Autumn and begged her to stop, offering whatever she wanted just to keep the peace. But not this time. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up the investor contract, and dialed the number listed. My voice was steady when I spoke. It's time to accelerate the timeline. I want the announcement out this week. Both new clinics, press release, media coverage, everything. If Autumn wanted a war, she was about to learn I didn't fight small anymore. Later that night, as I left the clinic, I found myself staring at the building. The lights glowed softly against the dark sky. I thought of every patient who had trusted me, every wall I'd painted, every bill I'd scraped to pay. This place wasn't just a business, it was proof. Proof that I was more than the forgotten daughter, more than the invisible sister. Proof that I could take every wound my family gave me and turn it into something unbreakable. The aftermath was ugly, painful, costly. But in that ugliness, I found a fire I didn't know I had. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The press release went live on Wednesday morning. Dr. Sierra Alvarez expands her vision. 2 new clinics opening this fall. My photo, white coat, arms folded, smiling with quiet authority, splashed across local news outlets. It should have been a triumph. For a few hours it was. Patients congratulated me. Colleagues sent messages of support. Staff walked taller, their pride shining through every conversation. Then the counterattack came. By noon, a new post appeared on Autumn's feed. This one wasn't vague. Sad to see greed replace compassion. My sister's clinics care more about expansion than the well-being of their patients. Be careful who you trust with your health. Comments flooded in. Some were harmless, strangers speculating, gossip swirling, but others cut deep. Typical. Doctors only in it for the money. Family calling her out? Must be true. Won't be going there anymore. Each word felt like a needle under my skin. My staff noticed too. Maya tried to reassure me, but her voice trembled when she asked, should we be worried? Worried? Yes. But defeated? No. That night, I stayed late in the clinic, sitting alone in the dim glow of my office lamp. For hours, I stared at my laptop screen, rereading Autumn's words. She wanted to drag me into the mud. She wanted me defensive, scrambling, small, but she'd forgotten something. I knew her secrets too. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally began to type. Not a rant, not a defense, a story. My story. The next morning, I posted it on the clinic's page. 10 years ago, I was eating instant noodles on the floor of my apartment, saving every penny to build this dream. I slept on treatment tables. I maxed out credit cards. I worked double shifts to make sure patients had a place to heal. My clinic wasn't built on greed. It was built on sacrifice, on compassion, on faith that healthcare should be for everyone. And while some may try to twist that truth, my patients know what this clinic stands for: hope, care, and resilience. Attached was a photo, not a polished headshot, but one of me in scrubs, exhausted but smiling, standing beside a patient who had just rung the cancer-free bell. The post exploded. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, former patients flooding the feed with their stories. Dr. Alvarez stayed with me through the night when I thought I'd die. She saved my son's life. She believed in me when no one else did. For every lie Autumn spread, 10 voices rose in truth. But victory came with escalation. That evening, as I left the clinic, my phone buzzed with a new notification. An anonymous account tagging me in a thread accusing me of malpractice. Fake patient names, fabricated stories, legal-sounding threats. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. Autumn had always been ruthless when cornered. I drove home gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My chest felt heavy, but beneath it pulsed something stronger: resolve. If my family wanted a war, then fine, I would fight. But I wouldn't fight their way. Not with lies, not with whispers. I would fight with proof. That night, I called my attorney. I need a cease and desist, I said, my voice steel. Defamation, harassment, make it airtight. And while you're at it, let's start preparing for a lawsuit. She's not going to smear my name without consequences. The silence on the other end was brief. Then, consider it done. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. She wasn't the sister who begged for scraps of approval. She was something else entirely, and she was just getting started. The legal letter went out on Monday. I knew the second Autumn received it because my phone rang nonstop for hours. Unknown numbers, private calls, voicemails full of rage, threats, and sputtering outrage. I didn't answer. Not once. By Wednesday, the storm hit. I arrived at the clinic to find a news van parked across the street. A reporter shoved a microphone toward me as I stepped out of my car. Dr. Alvarez, is it true your sister has accused you of fraud? Of endangering patients for profit? Cameras flashed. Patients stopped in the parking lot, whispering, watching. My chest burned, but I forced myself to stand tall. No comment, I said coolly, walking past them. Inside, my staff gathered, their faces pale. Maya closed my office door behind us. It's everywhere, she whispered, holding up her phone. Headlines, rumors. Autumn had gone public. My throat tightened as I scrolled through the stories. She'd twisted everything. Late-night emergencies framed as negligence. Ambitious expansion framed as recklessness. It was a smear campaign so elaborate it almost looked believable. Almost. I set the phone down, fingers trembling, and whispered, "She won't stop until I'm destroyed." Maya hesitated, then said softly, "Then destroy her first." That night, I pulled out the folder I had buried years ago, proof I had hoped I'd never need: bank records, text messages, receipts from when I had covered Autumn's tuition, her credit card debt, even the luxury vacation she swore she had paid for herself. Pages of evidence that my success had never come from family support. It had come in spite of their endless leeching. I stared at the stack for a long time. Releasing this would mean scorched earth, no going back, no family dinners, no fragile peace, just ashes. But Autumn had made her choice, and now I was making mine. The next morning, I scheduled a press conference. When I walked onto that small stage, a podium, a row of cameras, a dozen curious reporters, my knees almost buckled. But then I spotted a familiar face in the crowd, one of my first patients, an elderly woman who had once pressed a crumpled thank you card into my hands, whispering, "You saved me." I straightened. "My family has made serious accusations against me," I began, my voice clear and steady. "They've questioned my integrity, my ability, and my right to run the clinic I built from nothing. So let's talk about truth." I held up the folder. The cameras clicked furiously. For years, I worked 3 jobs to support my family. I paid my sister's debts. I funded her education. I carried her mistakes on my back while I built this clinic from scraps. And now, when it thrives, she demands a share she has not earned. When I refused, she tried to destroy me. A ripple moved through the room. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching, lenses zooming. This is not about patient care. This is not about safety. This is about entitlement. This is about someone who has taken for years, and when the giving stopped, decided to burn everything down. I dropped the folder onto the podium with a sharp thud. I will not be intimidated. I will not be silenced. And I will not hand over my life's work to those who never lifted a finger to build it. The applause started with a single clap, then grew. Patients stood. Staff cheered. The noise swelled until it drowned out every whisper, every doubt. Somewhere, I knew Autumn was watching, and for the first time, she couldn't twist the story. The truth was out, raw and undeniable. That was her breaking point, and mine too. Not the point where I shattered, but where I finally became unbreakable. The days after the press conference felt unreal. Patients poured in, some with flowers, others with handwritten notes. Strangers stopped me on the street, telling me they admired my courage. My inbox flooded with messages from young women in medicine. Thank you for showing us we don't have to bow to anyone. The clinic was busier than ever. Far from ruining me, Autumn's smear campaign had backfired spectacularly. People trusted me more, not less. They saw me as what I had always been, a fighter. But the truest shift wasn't in the clinic. It was in me. For years, my reflection had been a stranger. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, the invisible sister who worked quietly in the background while everyone else took credit. Now, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone different, someone fierce, someone free. The lawsuit moved forward quietly. My attorney assured me the evidence was airtight. Autumn's silence after the press conference told me she already knew she'd lost. Dad sent a single email, stiff, cold, blaming me for tearing the family apart. Mom left a voicemail, her voice small, asking if we could move past all this. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix things. I didn't apologize. I didn't chase their love. Instead, I let the silence stand. One evening, I stayed late at the clinic, walking through the empty halls, the hum of the machines, the faint scent of antiseptic, the glow of the lights. All of it felt sacred. Every wall carried my fingerprints. Every room held a piece of my struggle, my sacrifice, my triumph. This was mine, not by luck, not by inheritance, but by grit, by scars, by fire. I paused at the bulletin board in the waiting room, where patients had pinned thank you cards and photos. A little girl with missing front teeth grinned from one picture, a note scrawled in crayon. Thank you for making me better. That was the real inheritance I had built. Lives touched, hope restored, not wealth stolen, not power hoarded, but something enduring. I stepped outside, locking the doors behind me. The night was warm, the air buzzing with the hum of summer insects. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of my family pressing on my chest. I felt light. I thought of Autumn, of her endless demands, her entitlement, her rage. Once, her opinion could have crushed me. Now, she was just a voice I had finally learned to mute. The true revenge wasn't in the lawsuit, or the press, or the applause. It was in walking away without needing them anymore. A week later, I stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the new clinic. Reporters clustered, cameras flashing, but I barely noticed them. What mattered was the shovel in my hands, the fresh earth waiting to be turned. I glanced at the crowd, my staff, my patients, the people who had stood beside me through the storm. Not a single family member among them, and for the first time, that absence didn't sting. It felt like freedom. I pressed the shovel into the dirt, breaking ground on the future, my future. And as the cheers rose up around me, I knew with absolute certainty I had finally claimed more than a clinic, more than success. I had claimed myself. The invisible daughter was gone. In her place stood a woman no one could erase again.